How's everybody doing? Again, I want to thank you all for participating with your questions. All right, let's start answering them. What happens if your captain thinks you're not kicking up the proper amount to him and the family? First of all, your captain only knows about the earns that you tell him about. So if you're making money on the sly and he finds out because people do talk, you'll be called in and questioned. It's his prerogative to take it to the administration and create a bigger problem for you. Did you ever hear talk about or interact with Benny Eggs during your time as a friend? Do you know if he was still active or still had the underboss position for the West Side? This person is referring to Benny Eggs Mangano, who held an underboss position with the West Side, which is the Genovese family. Supposedly, his nickname came from the egg store that his family ran and owned. Personally, I didn't have any interaction with him. And as for his position, his own family had a hard enough time figuring out who was who. Does the mob still make lots of money through extortion? Extortion is viewed differently by the government and the mob. If a businessman came to us because he couldn't collect the debt owed to him, and believe me, we were usually his last choice, we would go and collect it. The government views this as extortion. In my opinion, very different than telling someone, I want X amount of money from you every week. Collecting money goes on all the time. So the answer is yes. Money is made by what's defined as extortion, which I think is no different than bill collectors. But understandably, because of who you are or who you represent, there lies the threat. How does it work if a MAID member wants to go on holiday? Do you have to put that on record with your captain? Yes. If you're going on vacation, you should let your captain know. My captain, Big John, would conversely let me know when he was going on vacation as well, which was mostly on hunting trips. And he was a terrible hunter because he never caught anything. What was your favorite Rent a Wise Guy story? So Rent a Wise Guy is the term used when a civilian runs to a wise guy for help. This also went on all the time, which coincides with the term push a guy into an urn, which is if a guy sits down for a civilian who's not his associate, as a result of that sit down, that civilian now becomes his associate. Offhand, I don't have any favorite story. I'd have to think about that more. Was there anyone you knew that had a college degree and worked a job using said degree while also being a friend in a life? Specifically, no, but there were guys who went to college, and just about everyone held a legitimate job during my time. If a guy's name is passed around to the five families to be proposed, and someone puts in a beef that's found out to be false, does the person who lied have any repercussions? Did you know Peter Pasta Pellegrino? And can a guy be shelved while he's in prison? The name of a proposed member gets passed around with the family looking to induct him first. If anyone has something negative to say, which turns out to be false, it obviously will no longer prevent the guy's induction. As for the person who lied, that depends on the family and how they want to handle it. The false rumor spreaders are the cancer of the mob and should be eradicated immediately. I've heard of Peter Pasta. He was a guy that was featured on the show Kitchen Nightmares and said to be a Banana member. Personally, I didn't know him. If he was a member at the time, the way he acted on the episode was an embarrassment.
Get the fuck out. Who the fuck are you?
Relax. Yo, dear.
Who the fuck are you? A fucking tough guy?
Once. Oh, shit. Hey.
As far as an imprisoned member being shelved, sure, he could be notified that he's shelved, but that don't take effect until he hits the street. Could you explain what it means to retire from the mob? Does the firm still have an obligation to kick up, and can they be called out of retirement? To begin with, there's no retiring from the mob. Much different, for example, as Frank Costello, who was forced into retirement, or Joe Bonanno. These were basically bosses who stepped down. There are guys that become inactive because of age or sickness. As for kicking up or being called in, again, it depends on the family. Most of the time, they let these guys be. Another person asked about the difference between guys from different sections of New York. A question that always comes up. Could you tell where they're from by the way they speak? Does Manhattan guys think they're superior? There was a time I told Anthony Guzzo, take the guy's face away and he's still a friend. The same goes for neighborhoods. In all honesty, we all thought our neighborhoods were superior. Depending on who was speaking, at times I was able to tell where they were from. I guess I have a Queens accent. I don't have any idea if I do or I don't. Based on the interactions you had with Mikey DeSantis, how intelligent would you say he is? I considered Mikey to be very intelligent. He had a good head on his shoulders. However, I wouldn't label him as extremely intelligent because he let people spread false rumors and did nothing when it was apparent that it was bullshit. Other than that flaw in his character, he was pretty intelligent. Has there been a case, to the best of your knowledge, where a wise guy has gone to deliver a beating and received one instead? It definitely could happen. And as someone else commented, the Bananas were embarrassed when they were disgracefully sent to cause trouble at a wake in Long Island and instead got their asses handed to them, and rightfully so. I challenge anyone to tell me where the honor is in conducting yourself like that in front of women and children. They deserved a lot more than the beating they received. When a guy's name gets passed around and someone in one of the families objects, if that guy dies later, can the associate be made, or is he denied membership forever? Good question. The short answer is yes. They eventually could be inducted, depending on what the issue is. If the person who died said the proposed member is no good, then obviously that's that. But just because someone objects doesn't mean a guy's denied forever. I know of guys that were knocked down 2 or 3 times and eventually inducted. If there was a highly effective leader you knew about in life, what did he have to do that made him stand out? I refer to Mikey DeSantis again. When he became acting boss, the first thing he did was revisit the guys that were previously on the shelf. If he felt it was unwarranted, he took the guy off and reinstated him. And I always felt that displayed good leadership skills. Do guys in a life have much connection to Sicily and Italy? And do they speak the language? There were a lot of guys with families still on the other side in both Sicily and Italy, and a fair amount of guys could speak the language. During my time, our acting boss, Matty Madonna, had made a trip to Italy. This next question is a good one. Do wise guys appreciate and study the history of their family and the mob in general? I feel like us civilians have more interest in the history of Cosa Nostra. This is 100% true. To my amazement, civilians know much more about the history. There were old-timers explaining how things in the family used to be years ago. That's the only history that I've ever seen spoken about. But the truth is, no one cares. Their only concern is how to put a dollar in their pocket, not who the boss or underboss was in their family 90 years ago. This person said he believes it's a rule that murders are not allowed anymore. Given the threat of other crime groups taking over, would you say murders may become more prevalent to enforce authority, or would you say this is completely out of the question? I've said this in the past. Murders bring tremendous heat from law enforcement, and nobody wants that. As far as other criminal ethnic groups, I don't see them taking over, as opposed to just doing their own thing. You don't need to kill people to exert authority. Do you have to be sober to commit a hit? Could a made guy get in trouble if he attempted it drunk or drugged out? First of all, no member should be on drugs or drugged out. And since both alcohol and drugs affect your functions, it wouldn't be a good idea to do anything in that state. If you botched something and it became known that you were drunk or high, I would have to say that you have a problem. The next question I'm a little confused about. What is the best way for a civilian to defend against racketeering? I'm not sure if this person means to avoid being charged with racketeering or how to not become a victim of it. Either way, the answer would be to keep your distance from people in the mob. If you go about life minding your business, chances are you'll never have to be concerned with racketeering. That's the best answer I have to offer. Vito Genovese was known for his ruthlessness. Why didn't he get rid of Vincent Gigante for the failed hit on Frank Costello? Why didn't it hurt Chin's career? On May 2nd, 1957, Chin was sent to kill Frank Costello on the orders of Vito Genovese. Chin fired a shot at Costello as he walked into his Central Park West apartment building. That bullet only grazed Costello's head, and he survived. The most likely answer is, it boiled down to pure luck for Costello, because Chin followed orders and he did shoot him. And although he didn't kill him, Genovese's goal was achieved, which was to get Costello out of the way. If there's a beef, does the boss have to know about it all the time? When is a beef taken to the higher-ups? Does every beef require a sit-down? And if the beef is within the family, do you also have a sit-down? The boss does not have to know about every beef that goes on, unless someone brings it to his attention. A beef gets kicked upstairs when the two people involved can't come to a resolution, and it would go to their captains. And if the captains can't put an end to it, it'll go to an administrative level. Every issue doesn't require a sit-down. Sometimes things are handled between people who talk and come to an agreement. There are a lot of issues that go on within a family. Some can be handled again by talking, and when they can't, a sit-down's required. How is it that associates could be around a made guy, but they're not supposed to know that he's made? Usually, an associate knows the guy he's with is a member. Is every civilian supposed to know that? No. But with your associates, it's known. This person said that he didn't want to insult anyone by his question. It seems the Gambino family was running smoothly under the reigns of Carlo and Castellano, but when Gotti took over, it went downhill. He wants to know if it was because Gambino and Castellano were Sicilian and Gotti was Napolitan. First and foremost, you have three very different characters and personalities. Gambino was a silver fox, quiet and deadly, who believed in keeping a low profile. Castellano was schooled by him, who also believed in keeping a low profile, but preferred to carry himself as a businessman. You have to remember, Gotti didn't inherit the position. He took it, and he did so by breaking Cosa Nostra rules. He was a street guy, a gangster. There's no question about it. Completely on the opposite side of the spectrum from Gambino and Castellano. Although Sicilians have their ways and Napolitans have theirs, I don't believe it had anything to do with what region your bloodline came from. Before I get to the last question, let me mention the super thanks icon beneath this video for anyone who wants to show appreciation for the content being put out by this podcast. And thank you. Did it ever bother you that your captain was Big John? And did other members in the life take him serious? From the inception, I always tried to respect Big John as my captain. Put it this way, I started him out with 100% respect, but it was by John's actions that little by little chipped away at that respect. And there came a point when it was obvious that I lost respect for him. Reflecting back, Big John made no sense. He would do everything in his power to go against me, yet when Mikey told him they were taking me out of his crew, he carried on that it wasn't fair. Obviously, he wanted to torture me more. And then he did the ultimate and put a false label on me and tried to get me killed. Where I'm at in my life now, I forgave Big John. And the only feelings that surface when I hear his name is pity, which brings me to the second part of the question. Did most guys in their life respect Big John? Most guys did respect him because they knew he was a captain in the family. However, did anyone who could be characterized as capable respect him? Absolutely not. We knew what he was about. And it didn't matter that Joe DiNapoli gave him a captain's position because you can't turn an Irish setter into a pit bull.